All right, back here on Inside Wrestling Radio, and up to the interview portion of the program. And today on the telephone, we have Kirby Mack. Kirby Mack got into business back in 2001, and since that time has worked for about every major indie promotion in the United States. And he's also done some dark matches for TNA and the WWE, also doing some security up in the WWE. And we're going to talk about all that stuff and his history and what he's got going on currently. But right now, welcome to the program, Kirby Mack. Kirby, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
Great, man. And listen, I greatly appreciate you coming on. We've been trying to get you for a while, man, but we've been having trouble scheduling. Your schedule and my schedule hadn't been jiving, so today was our lucky day to get together.
Me and you haven't not jived before, so it's all good.
That's true, Kirby. You're right. We have a little bit of a history. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later in the interview here. But tell me, man, how you been doing? I haven't seen you since last year. What you been doing recently?
I've been doing really good, man. Up there around Christmas, I took a little sabbatical, so to speak, from wrestling. I was just so beat up. My knee, my ankle was all shot. We took a couple weeks off. About to get back at it full force now, but basically I've just been resting and training, and I feel great now.
Did you get hurt in the ring, or was it an outside the ring injury?
No, the knee was just from over years, and the ankle I got hurt up in New York. I took a Spanish fly from one of the members of the SAT, and they ended up catching my ankle on the back of the mat and folded it all the way back to where basically the bottom part of my foot was touching the back part of my leg.
Wow. All right, Kirby, listen, let's go way back, man, in your history and what got you started in the business. And I know you got in around 2001, but before that, were you a fan, or was it something that you had always liked, or how'd you get in?
Well, I've been watching wrestling since way back as I can remember, like 3 years old. I've always been a fan of wrestling, and I guess I kind of look towards, I idolized Shawn Michaels growing up, and I have kind of a jaded past, so to speak, with my father who left us at a pretty early age. So I look towards other influences kind of as a father figure, and Shawn Michaels was kind of that to me. You know, he was in my home every Monday night. I actually told my mom at one point if she remarries, she can only remarry Shawn Michaels.
Sure.
Didn't work in my favor, though. So I was always a fan growing up, but I didn't really want to become a wrestler until I always kind of wanted to be like a stuntman. At first, I just run around and crash into walls with a motorcycle helmet on. And then my uncle took me to see my first Jim Carrey movie, which was Ace Ventura, and I was like, wow, that guy's really funny. That looks easy, so I want to be a comedian. Well, it turns out you have to be funny to be a comedian, so that didn't work out for me. And so I was like, well, how can I take an entertaining aspect with the stunt aspect? And I was like, wait a minute, pro wrestling. I love it anyway. So then when we moved from Philly to South Carolina, ironically enough, the person who ended up cutting my hair was Chief Jay Eagle's wife, Rhonda. And so and then, I was kind of a bad kid. I had some misguided energy and some misdirected rage and hate. So as a way to channel that, my mom's like, look, if you want to be a pro wrestler, I'll pay for pro wrestling school. God bless her, that's what she did.
That's unusual. Most parents, the last thing they want their kids to do is to get involved in pro wrestling. So that was a very good bump from the beginning for you there.
Yeah, my mom has always been a big supporter from whether it was soccer or karate or really anything that we wanted to do. She's always been a pretty big supporter and one of those follow your dream moms.
So your first foray, are you telling me, getting in was there at Chief Jay Eagles? Is that how you started?
Yeah, I actually started, I went to Chief Jay Eagles training school, and I say training as loosely as I can. I went there and, paid the weekly fee, and there were guys there. At first it started off actually pretty decent. I can't remember the guy's name. His real name was Jason. I think it was like Kid America or something. I mean, he was teaching us how to bump and run the ropes, and he was really putting us through the ringer, and then he ended up having a falling out, and then so it kind of turned over to Nick Fury. I had nothing against Nick, but at the time, Nick kind of had his own demons. Instead of really it being a school, it was just kind of an open frenzy, and we were just kind of there to be Nick's ragdoll, so to speak. That's why I broke in. I got my formal training on how to bump and run the ropes, but I didn't really learn from like a psychology or really how to put things together from that standpoint.
That's the thing, I guess, and that's some of the problem with a lot of these local so-called schools is there's nothing being taught other than to not kill yourself when you take a bump. There's no psychology, no none of that stuff being taught. You got to break some bad habits when you get properly trained, wouldn't you say so?
Sure, yeah, exactly, definitely. I learned, how to bump, I learned how to tuck my neck, and I learned how to run the rope. But other than that, I was only in the training school for a couple of, maybe a couple of months actually instead of weeks. And then Eagle was like, hey, you ready to go? And because they needed a partner for Nick. I actually broke in my very first match. I was a juvenile delinquent teaming with Nick Fury against, I want to say Power Crew was their name.
Yep, that's right, Power Crew.
I had no idea what I was doing. In a sense, I almost had to be retrained once I finally kind of fine-tuned my bumping and selling aspect of it.
How long did you work there for Eagle before you moved on from there to get some actual real training?
Sure. I worked for Eagle for, I'd say probably a good 2 years, maybe 2-3 years. It was working for Eagle, which led me to sort of the connections that I got. I was at training one day. We were doing shoot fighting, shooting around, and, in walks this loudmouth, fat, egotistical Southern belle, Thomas Simpson, and he loves to run his mouth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what he's good at. So that's what he was doing. He was running his mouth to me, and I didn't take kindly to that at that time. So I shot back at him. He wanted to get in the ring and shoot with me, and I'm shooting back at him, saying, "There's no way I can lift 2 tons, so I'm out of luck in this fight." And that was actually my first encounter with Thomas. Right after I mouthed off to Thomas, Nick Fury pulled me aside in the back, and he's like, "Hey man, you know what you just did? You just talked trash to Thomas Simpson. You just ruined your wrestling career for good." At that point, I didn't know who Thomas Simpson was, so I really didn't know who or what Nick was talking about.
Yeah.
But later on down the road, Thomas showed up at another show, and this was right after the Hardy Boys put out their Extreme magazine, and I saw Thomas. I said, "Wait a minute, I know you. I saw you in that magazine." So I ran to the car and I got the magazine because I was drawing a drawing of Jeff, kind of a fan art. And I was like, "Look, this is you." And he's like, "Yeah, it is." And then he was starting up that Omega version 2.0.
Yeah.
It was about then when he got me away from Eagles to join Omega, and then the rest he just kind of is history. He just kind of led me into other promotions and through his contacts and through his connections. And so I never really actually went back to Eagles from that moment on.
Well, once you get out of somewhere like that and you get in a taste of, I guess, how the real business works, you don't really want to go back. You know what I'm saying?
Sure, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you kind of always want to one-up yourself. And I think, too, in a sense, being that direct and kind of that aggressive with Thomas in the first meeting with him is one of the things that maybe got his attention, because you know how Thomas is. You got to really stand out to get his attention.
Yeah, it speaks to your level of talent, because Thomas does have an eye for talent. We all know that. And
Yeah.
I guess kind of picking you out of the crowd like that, I guess kind of spoke to your talent even at that early stage of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, Thomas was, I think, the first one. He's like, "You need to get out of those Asics and put on some boots and get some real gear." I took his advice, and that's what I did.
At that time, Kirby, were you actually thinking that this could be something you would do as a career, or was it something more or less just like something to do just to kind of kick around as a hobby?
I was always focused when I got into wrestling to always do it as a career. I remember in high school, they made us map out our life story. We had to draw it, kind of cartoonize our life story. And mine went high school, then it went to Texas to join the Shawn Michaels Wrestling Academy. And then I went from that academy to graduating the academy to working for the WWE. So I always had it mapped out as kind of, this is going to be my career. This is going to be what I do.
Gotcha.
But I always had a fallback plan, because my mom, coming up a single parent, raising 3 kids on her own, she was able to finally get through college at like 40 and finish. And she always told me, I'll support any dream you have, but I would really like it if you go to college so you at least can have a fallback plan. She didn't force me to go, but I just knew that it's better to go and have a degree just in case.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's really smart, for you to actually do that and have a backup plan, because most guys don't, and that's why you see some people who I'm a fan of, but unfortunately shouldn't be in the business that still are.
Sure, yeah.
Kind of a bad thing. And I love Ricky Morton to death, and we've had Ricky on twice doing interviews here, but he'll tell you straight out, this is all I got. This is all I know how to do. So I think, in saying that, he's kind of saying, look, guys, you're young coming up, but have a backup plan.
Yeah, well nowadays, too, everything's so changing, especially with like the internet and all this social media. I mean, everything in the blink of an eye, you're literally a 15-second star, and then it's gone. So if you really look at like what's the shelf life of a professional wrestler as far as making decent money, you're looking at 5 years, and then you got to try and reinvent yourself or something.
And speaking of reinventing yourself, we're going to, you mentioned Omega 2.0 a few minutes ago, and when we get back from the break, I want to talk about, because that's where I actually first heard of you as Omega 2.0, and you kind of alluded to me, to us having some history regarding that, and we'll talk about that when we get back from the break, right here on Inside Wrestling Radio with Kirby Mack, coming up next. All right, back here on Inside Wrestling Radio, and today on the telephone we have Kirby Mack. And before the break, we were talking about his early career and things he's done, and him actually meeting Thomas Simpson, which I guess, Kirby, would be a huge turning point in your career, wouldn't you say?
Oh, it absolutely was. Yeah, it's because of that and that friendship that I forged with Thomas over the past years is where I was able to meet so many of my idols and learn from them.
As you know, we have Thomas on here on the program a good bit, and he helps us out with a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and so he's a friend of the show. In the introduction I gave him when he first came on here, he is either the most loved or the most reviled. There is no in between with Thomas Simpson. What do you attribute to that? Is it just the attitude that you had mentioned earlier, or is it the way that he just will basically say what is on his mind without a filter? What's your idea of why he's either hated or loved and there's no in between with Thomas?
Thomas is successful at what he does. He has a lot of successful friends. He surrounds himself with greatness, so to speak. If Thomas sees something in you and believes in you, he'll go to no ends to make sure that other people see that and believe it, and that it can shine. But if Thomas doesn't see that in you, he won't give you the time of day, and I think a lot of people will take that as disrespect, whereas Thomas is like, listen, it's business at the end of the day, that's what this is. And a lot of people, especially once they get to know Thomas and they hear the stories about Thomas, and if they're on Thomas's bad side, they ultimately think, well, Thomas is disrespectful, he needs to show me respect, because I've been on this indie scene for 5 years, but ultimately, he doesn't owe you anything. But I definitely think it's the mixture of, there's absolutely no filter on Thomas. He'll say what he wants, he'll say what comes to mind, and as bad as that is, that's also good, because I'll go to Thomas if I have a question. I'll say, Thomas, brutally honest, what do you think of this?
Right.
And he'll let you know.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, he absolutely will let you know. And we keep saying no filter, but that's the truth, man. The guy has absolutely no filter. But, he's had a lot of success by that rule. But at the same time, there have been some failures, which brings me back to Omega 2.0. That thing started off with a bang, and that's actually where I guess I first heard of Crazy K, the gimmick you were doing back then. What do you think was the problem with Omega 2.0? Why did it kind of not do as good as Omega version 1?
It's kind of hard to say because I was in such a young mindset, but looking back at it, it never really drew, and I think maybe that I don't know if it was the wrong location or it wasn't promoted enough. I know that my brother and myself and my tag team partner at the time papered Forest City, but that was the only extent that we went. I mean, we put flyers everywhere, but it was only in Forest City. The building was kind of dark and drafty, but I guess you can't really attribute that because NWA Anarchy and Wildside,
Sure.
They control crowds of 200-300. Ultimately, though, I think it would have kept going had it not had so many building issues. But I think over time it probably could have been something that caught on word of mouth. Maybe we went into it with high expectations too fast, and instead of thinking it was going to be an overnight success just because of the name, rather than
right.
and it building to what it could have been.
And that's a very intuitive assessment on your part there, because I guess with you being there, you know exactly how it went down. And listen, I want to tell you, I apologize for being such a, for lack of a better word, an ass to you back in the day. But I didn't really know you. I didn't know the extent of your history and your training. But I had heat with Thomas. And
Sure.
for the people who don't know, this goes back what Kirby, at least 10 years now, I guess, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It goes way back. And Thomas had just started Omega 2, and I was running a website there, and I was kind of just giving Thomas what for some of the failures that I was hearing that he was doing. And I guess you got a little bit of the collateral damage on that because because he was kind of promoting you as his top guy, and never having heard of you before that time, I was like, well, is this guy trying to be a ripoff of the Hardys? Because I'd seen some of your stuff online.
Sure.
And you know what I'm saying? So, and that's kind of, I don't think that's really what you were going for, but I think that's kind of just because of your look and your style may have been some of that. But yeah, man, I just wanted to tell you, and I don't think I've ever told you personally, but I do apologize for being a little out of the way.
It's all good, man. I appreciate it. It's funny though too. It amazes me the way I carry myself and my demeanor.
Yeah.
A lot of people that don't know me say I look like kind of an intense person or kind of a jerk, for lack of a better term. And there'll be a lot of guys who, before I wrestle them, how when you wrestle someone afterwards, you guys kind of made magic and you forge a bond, and,
Sure.
and they'll come up to me after the match and they'll be like, "Hey man, thank you so much. I appreciate it." And to be honest, I didn't know what to think of you before we wrestled, but I like you. You're a cool guy. So
Yeah.
it could be on my part too. So
Well, I mean, it's just it was the circumstance at the time. But after you and I met up there at Brody's at the WWC, and I watched you in the ring, I was like, this kid really does have something special. And speaking of that, Kirby, my former partner Mickey Free said that one thing he said about you, and Mickey's very rarely gives out compliments, but one thing he said about you was that your ring work was very polished, very just sharp. But the thing he was most impressed with was your ability to sell and market yourself. Because I know at one time you had, when MySpace was all the rage, you had your MySpace page rocking and rolling with all kinds of merchandising and stuff like that. And,
Sure.
and everybody said that when you came to the show, man, it was like, a true professional had to enter the building. And I always thought that was an excellent compliment, especially coming from Mickey about you. Do you still do a lot of self-marketing and stuff like that as well?
yeah, I do, and especially when, and it sounds kind of like a cop-out, but it's the truth. But especially when the economy hit, it really took a toll, because back before, when the economy was rolling, I mean, you know, indie wrestling, it was all the craze, and it was 8x10s, and it was T-shirts, and no people wouldn't mind dropping $5, $10, $20 at an indie show on one of their favorite wrestlers. But now that the money's so tight, you know, it's enough just to get into the show, let alone buy merchandise and stuff. So I mean, I still market to an extent, but right now I've taken it more of a social media marketing, where I've been putting songs out on YouTube, and, you know, rap songs, that whether they be free or whatnot. I was taught at an early age that perception is reality. So if someone perceives you to be, you know, this big star, then in their eyes you are.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of guys miss that, Kirby, because when they show up to these shows looking like they just got off work with grease still on their fingernails and stuff like that, it just kind of takes away from that suspension of disbelief. Wouldn't you think?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Especially when their gimmick is, you know, the multi-millionaire.
You mentioned TJ a minute ago. Is he still wrestling, your brother TJ?
Yeah, he is. We're still teaming up.
Oh, awesome. Okay, cool. He was doing that. What was that gimmick he was doing with the, what was the name?
Oh, Dexter Poindexter?
Yeah, is he still doing Dexter?
He still does it upon request. Still a fairly popular gimmick. I think he was made to do that every time he does it.
Yeah, a lot of people have given him a lot of props about that gimmick, and in fact, I think Thomas said that he expected that thing to really catch on at one point, and then I guess he quit doing it. Y'all started focusing more on the tag team deal. Is that how it kind of went down?
Yeah, well, the thing was, is like when Dexter really started catching on all the crazes about the same time that Eugene came out, we didn't want to kind of kill the Dexter character. We wanted to make the Dexter character something special. We also didn't want to have it at that point in time where when Eugene caught on, if Dexter did catch on, all of a sudden Dexter's this Eugene ripoff. So we didn't want to have that stigma. So we kind of put him on the shelf and just say, okay, when someone calls and requests him, we'll do him.
Kirby, we're really short on time here, but before we get out of here, man, Generation Me went up to TNA and was given a deal. I guess they were pulled up out of Ring of Honor. A lot of people, man, said that should have been yours and TJ's spot. How do you react to that?
You know, I got nothing against Generation Me. They're great guys. They're great talent. But I guess I just really don't understand, and it could be that's just business, or it's who you know, or it's right place, right time. But I mean, at one point, I honestly thought that was going to be us, because we had done Darks, and we had been in contact with Terry, and we'd been sending promos with, you know, D-Lo left and right. And I was like, man, this might be our shot. And then all of a sudden, you're kind of blindsided by it. And I mean, I'm always happy when a guy has success, especially when it's deserved and earned. But there's always that little bit of jealousy where you're like, oh, that's one less spot for me.
What do you think, man? What is your opinion on how they got the gig over you guys?
I think it was just maybe there was more people pulling for him, as far as like I'm sure the Motor City Machine Guns went to bat for him and stuff like that.
And that's probably true. I know you went up and did some dark stuff for WWE. What was it, last year?
It was 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah. And how was that, man? How'd you like going up and working for the Fed?
Oh, that was great, and what made that even, I guess what made it good but not good with the same sense, I didn't get to team with my brother, which kind of sucks, because I really wanted to see, I wanted them to see me and TJ as a package, because like, hey, maybe these kids have something here. But he got to do his own thing later that evening, being the fake Shawn Michaels. But I ended up getting the team with Brody, which really eased a lot of the stress, because I've known Brody. Me and Brody go way back, too, because Brody's helped me out a lot. But not only was it less stressful that I got the team with Brody, but I also got to wrestle Paul London and Brian Kendrick, who are two of my really good friends. So I mean, it was just like any other day riding a bike.
I actually caught that match online there, and they gave you guys a lot, man. They really kind of put you over both in the match and on commentary, too. That was a big shot in the arm for you guys.
Yeah, definitely. But to walk out that curtain, you know, it's kind of like so surreal, because it's like, wow, man, this is what I've always dreamed about. And I'm finally coming out the stage. And what made it even better for me at that moment is we've kind of built up kind of a fan base around the area, because, you know, we've been doing it for so long.
Sure, yeah.
And it was in Charleston that night. And as I came out of the curtain, there was just a couple of indie smart marks in the crowd who knew who I was, and they started chanting for me. And that's kind of when I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's all about. Exactly. Kirby Mack, man, listen, thanks so much for coming on the radio. And there's so much more I want to talk to you about, man, but we are all the way out of time. If you'd like to, I'd love to have you back on sometime in the future, man, and talk about some more things that you've got going on. I know you got some music stuff out there and different things. So we'd love to have you back sometime in the future, bro.
Sure, of course, man. We'll treat this interview right here like the first time I'm coming into your federation and I'm wrestling. I won't give it all to you right now. I'll come back. You got to book me again.
Book you again, exactly. Before I let you go, man, give us that YouTube and Facebook and all that stuff real quick.
Yeah, you can catch me on Twitter Twitter.com/not Kirby Mack, N-O-T, Kirby Mack. And then from there you can just find all my Facebook and my main website and everything off of my Twitter. So it's just Twitter.com/not Kirby Mack.
Not Kirby Mack on Twitter. Very cool, man. You got any big shows coming up you want to plug real quick as well?
Yeah, this weekend actually we're going to be in Philadelphia for the CZW 12th anniversary show, the Combat Zone Wrestling.
Yeah.
The following weekend after that we will be in West Virginia for kind of a small little deal. And then the next weekend, the 26th, we will be in Maryland for Baltimore for Maryland Championship Wrestling, and that's their big anniversary show as well. So 2 big anniversary shows coming up featuring the Macks.
Again, Kirby Mack, thanks so much for coming on, man, and continued success to you, and we look forward to having you back on here in the future. All right, that's going to do it for the interview portion of the program. We'll be right back here to close out the show coming up next on Inside Wrestling Radio.